one is from the Factory of Sadness. 5 Browns on the roster bubble after mandatory minicamp last week. Number 1, they go Siaka Ika, defensive line. We'll get these all at the end then. Number 2, David Bell, wide receiver. Number 3, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, quarterback. Number 4, Pierre Strong, running back. And number 5 on the list, they say Cade York, kicker. Tim, I don't think they might be on the roster bubble. The only one I don't think is going to be on the 53 is Cade York, and he never was intended to be. They signed him as the guy on the practice squad, the young developmental kicker with Dustin Hopkins. But Ika and Bell are third-round picks. Andrew Berry and the Browns give every benefit of the doubt to draft picks. Pierre Strong they traded for, and I just don't see them getting rid of him. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson was drafted to be a developmental quarterback, and they had to throw him in probably 2 years before they really were hoping he would take significant snaps.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at that list, I do agree that York is probably the one that's most likely not to make the roster. I mean, he's kind of essentially, for lack of a better term, maybe a camp leg. Well, with Dustin Hopkins, he's entrenched as your starter. You know Dustin Hopkins can be the kicker next year unless he has a significant injury. But then you look at the rest of the list, David Bell, I don't think he's going anywhere. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I don't think he's going anywhere. Bell, I think, showed enough in clutch situations, particularly the one that's always going to stick out on my mind is that 4th down against the Jaguars. Granted, he got wide open with a coverage bust, but you still got to catch the pass and you still got to score the touchdown that 4th down. You think about how important that play was in that game, especially such a tight game against a Jaguars team that was still playing well before they had that late season collapse. I think Bell's done enough, even with the additions of Jerry Jeudy. With the addition of Jerry Jeudy in particular, Jamari Thrash, Cedric Tillman's second season. I don't know if David Bell goes anywhere. DTR, same thing, obviously bringing in Tyler Huntley and Jameis Winston. I think, you keep DTR around because, like you said, he wasn't supposed to play last year. You could argue he wasn't even supposed to play this year. And then he was forced to play more than he was supposed to. But I think when I look at this list, obviously the one who's got to step up the most for me, the one who's in the most trouble, I think is Siaki Ika. I think he obviously played very little last season. I was concerned, maybe he's a little one-dimensional, and he really struggled to get on the field. Although, granted, I think a large part of that was due to the veterans that were in front of him on the team. And then this offseason, they went ahead and added Quentin Jefferson, and they used their first pick in the draft, 54th overall, on Mike Hall Jr., who's a younger defensive tackle who has a higher upside and more pass rush ability to be out there on 3rd downs. I'm not saying Siaki Ika is going to be a 1-year and done guy for the Browns, but I think he's got a little work to do to make sure he keeps his spot.
Yeah, and I do think they will give him every opportunity. The other thing that I'm interested to see, David Bell is the type of wide receiver that in those choice route situations that we've heard they're going to use a lot, that's tailor-made for him. That's a guy that is really good at kind of seeing what the quarterback sees and getting to a soft spot. And those are guys that usually find a way to stay on the roster as the 5th, 6th, 7th wide receiver that carves out a niche because you can put him in a tough spot and he finds a way to make plays.
Yeah, it just seemed like he had a knack for just finding space on big plays. I mentioned that 4th down against the Jags. He had that big 4th down catch also in the comeback win against the Niners. Just a knack for making the plays that he's needed to make. So I think there's something to be said about that. And we'll see how he and honestly, not just him, but all the rest of the receivers really adjust and develop and work into this choice route system that Ken Dorsey's brought in.